Okay, let's see. Okay, so we're going to start. I guess last time was, an introduction to how important Tehillim is, and this week,
recording.
This week I guess I'm going to start by taking one perek of Tehillim and just going through it a little bit so we can see maybe what it could, apply to our lives and what we can do with it. So it's interesting because we mentioned last time that David HaMelech's life was not easy, and still, nevertheless, he was able to create this unbelievable book of Tehillim and songs and praises to Hashem. So just to indicate a few things, it shouldn't be like an overlooked idea of how difficult and hard his life is. I know it's hard to identify with someone, but we're talking about thousands of years ago, but we could look at people around us who just have had difficulties, and we could just, apply to our life. But just a few things about David HaMelech. He was really not recognized to be anointed at all as a melech at the beginning. He looked as a little shepherd. His family didn't even think that when they came to anoint a melech that he was even in consideration. We know obviously that he was chased by Shaul his whole life. Now we can't put a real picture on what does it mean to be chased your whole life, but maybe we can associate that with something else. Maybe people don't necessarily like us, or even a little bit of anything that we can feel of a hardship. His son of Shalom, we know, his own son rebelled against him. Chas v'shalom, people have children who not necessarily rebel against their parents, but maybe don't follow necessarily in their parents' ways, and how painful that might be to parents. Even when he did become king, he was not recognized as king for the first 2 years. So just a feeling on a very simple, basic level of not feeling validated or not being recognized for the things that we're doing. Obviously, this is, his is much more extreme, but we can have a little sample of that hardship, and just to realize that his life was really quite difficult. Even though it's thousands of years ago, we can't relate to it, but there are hardships that people go through on a daily basis, and we can just take that and realize that he was still able to compose this unbelievable song of praises and thanks to Hashem.
Wasn't he cold at the end of his life?
Yes, he was cold because they say that in the cave, Shaul was chasing him, and he actually saw Shaul in the cave, and he had an opportunity to kill Shaul, and Shaul didn't even know that he was there, and he ripped a piece of his clothing. When Shaul went out of the cave, he saw a ripped piece of clothing. He realized David could have killed me, but he didn't. But Chazal say that he ripped off a tzitzis. He desecrated his tzitzis. There's some opinion, and therefore Mida Keneged Mida, he was cold for at the end of his life. They even brought a woman to keep him warm towards the end of his life. So like a sickness that people have, he went through real suffering. So with Tehillim, I think even with the first one that we're going to touch on today, I think we're trying to figure out how was David HaMelech throughout his life able to remain so positive? How was he able to remain so happy? How could it be that someone who has one hardship after the next, right, Lo Aleinu, could still be able to compose something so powerful, so connected to Hashem? As we mentioned last time, that the Torah even says it's worth it to create the entire world just for David's songs. How could it be? What is it that allowed David to almost have this inner peace and happiness and ability to move on even with all the hardships that he had? So that's what we're going to touch on today, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of that ability to find our own inner peace and serenity and happiness within his words of Tehillim. So the first perek Aleph, he starts off by saying, Ashrei Ha'ish, how praiseworthy is the man, Asher lo halach be'etzat risha'im, that he did not go in the way of the wicked, u'bederech hata'im, and in the way of the sinful, in the way of sins, lo amad, he didn't stand, u'b'moshav letzim lo yashav, and he did not sin with the letzim, with those who are fools, like scorners, who make fun of things, belittle things. On that first pasuk, really, I think it's a first pasuk, yeah. There are three things that he's really relating to us, right? Again, we're trying to figure out how was David HaMelech able to retain, at this point I would say even his sanity. Like, how was he able to just keep going and not only be sane, but be happy and really be, have this peace. So he teaches us with the first pasuk three key things. And number one that he says is Ashrei Ha'ish. How fortunate is the man. Chazal tell us that it's interesting that he uses this word Ashrei, because there are different ways to say that a person is, successful. You could say how praiseworthy, or how matzliach ha'ish, how successful is the man. But he uses this word from the shosh osher, right? So we know that osher with an ayin is wealth, and Chazal even tells us that matzliach is more focusing on mundane physical success, like possessions, money, status, honor. Where osher, he's talking about how do we find true happiness, right? There are thousands of books written on it. Well, David HaMelech tells it to you in the first pasuk in Tehillim. Asher Ha'ish, what is the secret to being truly happy with an osher, with an aleph? Asher lo alach be'etzat reshaim. So the first thing is not to go in the ways of the reshaim, the wicked people. Okay? Not to be in the wicked people. What could this mean? So let's take it on the simple pshat level. Don't be with bad people. Why? He tells you very simply, u'b'derech hatayim. Because if you hang out with the wrong people, you're going to be with the wrong crowd, with people who don't do good, eventually lead you to b'derech hatayim. You're going to eventually come to a place where you're sinning, where you're constantly doing things that are not good for you, not good for others, not good in the eyes of Hashem. V'lo amad b'motzav leshim. Moshav letzim. And then he says, and then if you don't do chataim, you're not also going to associate yourself, right? You're not going to associate yourself with those who are letzim, scorners, with those who are, like foolish. So we see from here that it's almost like one thing leads to another. That if a person who's truly happy will not go in the ways of wicked people, will not associate himself with bad people, because if he does that, it would just lead to something worse. You're eventually going to do things chataim that you do not want to do, and eventually that's who you will sit with, that's who you will associate with, that's what your life will be surrounded with. So we see that one thing from here leads to the other. It's interesting that we can look at it a little bit in a different way. How fortunate is the man who did not go in the etzat of reshaim, in the counsel, in the advice of wicked people. Where do we see such a thing, that someone would go in the counsel of wicked people? So it's interesting because we have I want to read you I actually wrote the Rashi, so I don't need to look at the Tanakh. We have the story in Sefer Bamidbar about the spies, the Meraglim. Interesting, the Meraglim. Moshe says, should we send spies? Chazal actually tell us that it was not even Moshe's idea, but whole Bnei Israel got together and they said, we want you to send us spies to scout the land. We are not certain that this is, the best land, like Hashem said, Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. Let's go see for ourselves if this land is good. So Hashem says, Shlach lecha, if you want to, Moshe, you could send. It tells us there that there were 12 men who were picked, and they were all the Nasim, the Roshei, Shvatim. They were the heads of the Shvatim, and they were chosen. Okay? And Rashi tells us there, it's interesting, that there's a Rashi that says that the way they came back is the way they left. The way they came back to tell Moshe what they saw is exactly the way they left to tour the land. What is that way? Negatively. Mm-hmm. Meaning they left with a negative eye. They weren't interested in coming back with reports to Moshe that the land was Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. They weren't interested in telling Moshe, the land is good. They saw that Bnei Israel sent them with negativity. They were feeling the pressure of the nation, and therefore they already had made up in their minds that when they go and scout the land, they're going to scout it negatively. Okay? So they went with a negative eye. It tells us when they went and they scouted the land, Vayavo at Hebron, that they came until Hebron. Except, it tells us here something interesting that Rashi points out. Why is it that it says Vayavo at Hebron? It should say Vayavo at Hebron, that they all came to Hebron, but it doesn't say they all came to Hebron. It just says, and he came to Hebron. So Rashi points out, right away he says Kalev. Meaning, only Kalev went to Hebron. So these are Rashi's words. Why did only Kalev go to Hebron? He says, Kalev levado. Kalev by himself. Nobody else went with Kalev. Halach sham v'nishtatech al kivrei avot. He went over there and he bowed himself. He poured himself over the graves of the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, where they were buried. Maras Machpelah. Shelo, why? Why would he do that? By himself go. Shelo yeh nasat lechaverav. That should not be tested with his friends, and he uses the same word. Liot be'etzatam. Etzat reshaim. He should not be with them in their negativity. Meaning, Kalev knew the risk of negativity. What could negativity cost? He realized that it's worth it for him to separate from his peers, to risk his life to be noticed as a spy, to go and travel to Hebron and dive into the Avos. That's better than being be'etzat chaverav, with the negative advice and plan that his peers had. So he literally risked his life in order not to be negative. Because what comes out of negativity, as David HaMelech tells us, Ashrei, how happy is the man? Asher lo alach be'etzat reshaim. Happy is the man who is not negative, who's not looking for negativity. U'bederech chatayim. When you're negative, what does it lead to? Negative chatayim leads to nothing good, only sins. Velo amad b'moshav letzim. And that's not who you're going to associate with. And not only that, we understand moshav letzim as he sits in a place of scorners. People who are fools make fun. What's the idea? The idea is that when a person is negative within himself, everything is negative. It's not only it affects you and you're just negative, but when you're negative within yourself and you don't feel good with yourself, right? Yeah, I heard a shir, but I forgot the name. A lot of this is based on Rav Shai. I forgot the shir I heard, but I have to give you the name because he's really, really excellent. Okay, I'm repeating a lot of it, but it's good to, if you wanted to see it for yourself. He says it's what was I just saying? I was trying to train of thought.
Negativity when you're with other people.
When you with
Everything's negative.
Oh, very good. Everything. So he says like a bully. A bully within himself is negative, but he expresses that negativity to everybody else. That negativity is always affecting someone else. It's not just it stays within you. When you're negative with yourself, you see this one is negative and you take it out on that one. This part of your life is negative and you take it out on this one. What you can't find the good, they say conscious discipline. Whatever you focus on, that's what you get. Mm-hmm. You're going to focus on negative, you're going to get negative, and you won't be able to find true happiness. But if you focus on the positive, then you'll be able to find it. Who was the only person who was able to see this positivity? So first of all, two people, Yoshua ben Nun and Caleb ben Yefune. Yeah, sorry.
So I never heard before that they went with the intention of
Yeah.
giving a negative report. Yeah, they didn't want to move.
They were negative. They didn't. They
Yeah,
wanted because they
there
were
is an
stuck with
aspect
them.
of Bnei Israel not wanting to go into
Right.
Eretz Yisrael.
They wanted to live in the desert with
Going
the
to
Hashem.
Eretz Yisrael
I hear that.
is
Why?
with the man and with connection to Hashem. The fact that they had to work to build a relationship with something is very, very frightening for them. So on one end, sometimes a relationship is too close. It's a little bit scary. And I think they were comfortable in that relationship to take it to a level where we're actually going to work. I always look at it like marriage. I really look at it like marriage. Like The midbar is like getting engaged and like there's mud and everybody just loves you. You don't have to work for everything and you get flowers, you get everything. And then it's like you enter Eretz Yisrael and then you gotta work. You gotta work the land. That's it. The midbar's finished. Now you have to get to, it doesn't mean that the love is different. It's just that you have to work for it. It's nice to get mud. It's nice that your clothes change on you. It's nice that you don't have to do too much. You don't have to worry about, material things. But at the end of the day, a real relationship is one that's, in Eretz Yisrael where you have to work for it.
Don't give cow glasses. It'll scare them.
I'll put a damper on it. It's always a midbar.
But the difference with marriage is that many people hopefully have seen some sort of model of marriage in their home, whereas
Right.
this was a whole new situation.
Exactly. That's why I said it's very frightening to go into a new reality. I would say it's very frightening also to go from Mitzrayim to the midbar. It's a very different, scary reality. Very good. So, Kalev, we see, risked his life to daven and not to be included in the negativity, in the evil eye of the rest of his peers. And it's interesting also over here that when Bnei Israel heard the news, what did the spies tell them? Let's come back to what the spies said. The spies came back and they said, Eretz ochelet yoshveh. It's a land that eats its inhabitants. This is like their big, slogan. What we should go into this land? I believe it was the Klei Yakar who says, who's such a fool that the goodness of Hashem is right in front of you and you cannot see it? Only if you already decided to put a blind eye to the goodness of Hashem and to be negative, can you not see that it was good? You're spies in a different land. What are the chances that people are not going to recognize you? Not very much. Also, Chazal even tell us even more. They went at the time that it was the harvest. So all of the people in the other lands were more careful with their fields, and they had to bring back proof. They had to bring back fruit. Who's going to let them take fruit? People are much more careful with the first fruits that are growing. Of course they would notice spies. So Hashem, I think the Klei Yakar was saying, how can you not notice? And even Rashi points out, the only reason that they were burying the dead, land that eats its inhabitants, is because Hashem said this would be a good time. If people were busy burying their dead, no one would notice that you're spies, right? But they were unable to see the good in that. They were unable to see. And in fact, the other thing it tells us, that it says, Hayinu kechagbim be'enim. We were like grasshoppers in their eyes. We're like nothing, not a chance. There's one verse, I can't put it in my head right now, that it says, of course, because Hashem wanted to make the nace when you beat him even greater. He wanted you to see that when you lean on him, when you rely on him, when you trust him, that there's nothing that he can't do, right? He wanted to increase the nace, but they were unable to see it. And they were unable to see it because they went in negatively and they came back. They went into Eretz Yisrael negatively and they came back negatively. And what does negativity do? Right? They cried the whole night. They embittered the entire nation. Nobody wants to be around a negative person, but negativity is almost like contagious. They got everyone into it. Everyone was negative because of them, except Kalev ben Yefune, who was able to say these words when he says, what are you saying? Actually, it's unbelievable over there. There's another, it tells us what was the reaction of the Gedolim, of Moshe, Aaron, Kalev, and Yoshua, when Bnei Israel started crying and complaining the whole night. So it tells us that Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces. Who could imagine these Gedolim seeing what are we doing with these nations? Like Moshe Rabbeinu, who took us out of Mitzrayim and brought down the Torah, that he would fall on his face. Who can imagine that, right? And that Kalev ben Yefune and Yoshua ben Nun ripped their clothing. So I think it was one before, she says, how dare they? What is it like? Kalev ben Yefune and Yoshua ben Nun, how could their reaction be more than Moshe Rabbeinu? What are they trying to prove here? That they care about the land more, that they feel more pain, that people are negative. Why would they have such a drastic reaction? Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces. You don't have to go and be and rip your clothing. Why would you do such a drastic, more than the leaders themselves? So Chazal say no, because they saw the good. Moshe just knew about the good. When you see how good something is, and you felt it with your own eyes, you saw that positive, you saw that goodness from Hashem, it's like It wasn't to show Moshe off. It's like literally, like if you're like, you have no idea. Caleb says to them, Tova haaretz meod meod. I see positive. I see good. I saw it with my own eyes. I'm telling you, it's good. How can you not see it? That pained him. The fact that everyone was so negative and how dark it made. And what did we get out of it at the end, Bemet? We got nothing but Tisha B'Av. That's what we got out of Chet HaMeraglim. That you wanted to cry because you were seeing negative and you weren't able to see how good I am and how much I love you and how positive things are. Even when they don't necessarily look like that, then I'm going to give you a reason to really cry. And that's Tisha B'Av. Yes, so that if we go back, we see a classic example, Asher Ha'ish, how fortunate and truly happy is the man. Asher lo alach be'etzat rashaim. Stay away from negative people. Stay away from negativity altogether. You want to be happy? Get rid of the bad. Just get rid of all the negative that people say to you, that people talk about. Stay positive. Lo alach be'etzat rashaim. What does negativity lead you? Talk lashon hara, the sin. What does negativity lead you? To not be able to fulfill mitzvahs because you're not in the mood for this. It gets you in a bad mood. There's no ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. That's for sure. What good does it lead you? And then you're not a person who sees everybody else as also bad, everything else as bad. You don't need to be a bully and put that negativity on other people. So that is a person who is happy. So what should you do in case you don't want to be negative and you want to be something else? Here's the suggestion, he says. Ki im betorat Hashem chafzo before I continue, okay? One more thing before I continue, I don't want to forget. Kalev's reward, okay, is that Hashem in the Torah says to, when Moshe pleads for Hashem to forgive Bnei Israel, Hashem says, Salachti kedvarecha, I'm going to forgive them. I'm not going to kill them here in one shot. And then he says, V'kalev avdi, but Kalev, my servant, he will get the land that he saw. So the land that he went and he sacrificed his life, Hebron, that's the land that belonged to him once Bnei Israel conquered Eretz Yisrael. But I thought that more than the land that he got is that the Torah itself, that Hashem testifies, V'kalev avdi. How many people get this title of a true Eved Hashem? You know, this is a person who is just able to stand his ground and say, I will risk my life and not go to your negativity. He got the title Eved Hashem. Okay? David also has this title of an Eved Hashem, right? More than the land of Hebron. The title of to be considered at the end of his life an Eved Hashem is unbelievable. Okay? So, Im betorat Hashem chavtzo. So he says, then what should you do? Rather, in betorat Hashem chavtzo, it should be your desire to dwell yourself in the Torah, right? Who brings spiritual meaning, goals, true happiness, right? The Torah is something that's intangible, infinite. It attaches to our neshama. It is something of the emes and the truth, and that's why we find true happiness in it. Yageyuman v'layla. Delve yourself into this Torah. And what happens when you do? You're going to be like a tree who's deeply, deeply rooted. Okay? As we know that negative people don't have much inside, right? They bend like this because they don't feel good about themselves. But someone who is positive and feels good within themselves, the Torah will able to supply you with everything you need. You don't need anything from the outside. You will be like an etz shatul, a tree that's deeply, deeply rooted. You will have everything you need within yourself. Plagei mayim. You will have water. Asher priyo yiten bito. You're going to have fruits within that season. Ve'aleu lo yibol. And that your leaves will never wither. You will be a person who will able to be self-sustained, fulfilled within yourself. Not that you need anybody else or to beat up on anybody else, but you're so good within yourself. You have true osha within yourself. It doesn't make a difference, you know, what anybody else thinks, what anybody else says, right? And you wouldn't be able with this comment to go this way, with that comment to go with this. You'll feel fulfilled and good with yourself, content. And then he says, and when you do that, and you delve yourself in the Torah and mitzvos and chesed, and cling on to Hashem. V'kol asher yaseh yatzliach. So it's interesting when you do that, then everything you want, everything you do, you will be successful. You'll have that content within yourself, everything you need, but also on the mundane, physical, external, regular life, you will be matzliach, you will be successful. He says, Lo ken hareshaim. That's not how the wicked, negative people are. Ki im kamotz. So it's interesting. The art scroll over here, I hope I'm saying it right, series. You can always count on good old art. It's Google or art scroll. Those are the two, the best ones. So he says over here something beautiful. Lo ken hareshaim ki im kamotz. Not so the wicked ones. They are like a chaff. A shaft, that's how you pronounce it? Chaff. It is like a thing, very good. He says, why? Because he says, the wicked, they have this external thing that they look almost like a fruit, like a chaff. It looks like maybe it could be something that's really substantial and good. On the outside it looks like, wow, that looks like maybe something that is full, really full or fulfilling within itself. However, it's hollow. And it doesn't have any substance, and they're easily swept away. Okay, so they might, on the outside, these negative people who complain might look like there's something deep into these people, but the truth is that depth only comes within yourself. And no person stays away from negative things, stays away from negative people. It doesn't lead him to be, in a place where he sees other people as negative or other events in his life as negative. Even though it's hard, we have to try to be like Kalev, who was able to say, Ha'aretz hazot tova me'od me'od me'od. It's very good externally. Everything about it is excellent, exactly like Hashem promised us that it is. So that's a little bit of the first Yom Rishon, right? Perek Aleph. I wrote over here one more thing worth it to mention is just another example from the Torah where it tells us that Bnei Israel stopped in a place called Mara. And what happened in Mara? We know that they didn't have, it tells us that they had bitter water, okay, in Mara. Interesting that one Mefarish says that in fact, it's not that they had bitter water, is that they were bitter within themselves. Okay, and when they're bitter within themselves, even if the water is good, they're just going to see the water is bitter to begin with. An interesting story I heard actually in this lecture is that a man came to a town and he said, I really want to find out what kind of people live in this town. So he went over to one person, he said, tell me, are you from this town? So he says, yes. Did you always live in this town? So he tells him, yeah. He tells him, no, I'm not only from this town, I'm from a different town. So interesting, he says, well, tell me how the people were in your old town. So he says, the people in my old town, they were terrible, they were horrible, they were nasty, I couldn't stand those people. How are the people here in your town? He said, they're even worse, they're terrible, you can't even imagine, I can't stand these people here. And then he went to somebody else and he said, tell me, you're from here? And he says, no, I'm originally from a different place. He says, so how are the people in your town? Oh, those people are amazing. Those people are so great, full of chesed. I love them. I love my neighbors. I wish I could go back there. He says, how are the people here? Even better. I'm telling you, these people are the best people I've ever met. I never want to leave. So it just gives us a little bit of, eye-opening about, perception. How much a person's own perception will indicate for them, not indicate, it will
Color?
Color, right? Instill in them that's what the reality is. Well, what?
Influence?
Influence their reality. I heard a wonderful thing from Rabbi David. He writes these good books. What? No, he's an author. He wrote something reality, real something. Oh, he's so great. Okay, fine.
We'll look him up later.
Therapist.
Liskin. No, I think I know.
Okay.
Sure it's David? Lieberman?
Yeah, thank you. Is that it? Okay, very good. So he says, okay, so imagine that there is, so just a little tip. I was thinking, what could help us be a person who's Ashrei Ish, whose really happiness fulfilled inside, to get rid of some of the negativity in our life. So he said something really, really beautiful. He said that imagine that you have a baby who's running to the street. The baby's running to the street and he decides that the best place to stay is in the middle of the street. And he sits with his car, toys and teddy bear in the car, and all of a sudden a big red, truck comes, and the truck notices him, but he's going really, really fast, and he starts to honk, right? Everybody's like, right? But this baby's like, goo goo, gaga, like everything's great, life is awesome, right? Who's the one feeling frantic and paranoid? The driver or the parent or somebody watching this, okay? The baby's completely happy. Why is the baby happy? Because he has not translated this scenario as anything frightening, anything bad. His translation of scenarios, big truck. I like trucks. I have a truck right here. This is awesome, right? I see a truck right in front of me. He doesn't translate it bad. So he actually says that happiness as a state of mind is true. Any scenario that comes our way, if you want negative feelings, all you have to do is translate it negatively. But if you translate it positively, you will get positive feelings associated with that. So for example, if you hear somebody said something about you, so you could say she's a terrible person. You could start with the negativity, and all you did for yourself is just add more negative feelings, hardship, pain to your life, okay? Or you could say she must have been that. It couldn't be. It must have been that. If you give her a million reasons, at least you're rid of the negativity and increase the happiness in your life. Who cares at the end of the day? She said, he said, he did. At the end of the day, let's live our own peaceful life. Everyone's going to have a challenging life, like, hopefully not like David and Mouth, but everyone's going to have a challenging life in their own way that's difficult for them. We don't need to translate it even more negatively to cause ourselves even more pain. We can really focus on a positive twist to generate positive feelings, and with that, we could bring Ashrei Hanashim. How fortunate and happy are the women, right? We will be able to or maybe it's Ashrei. When we're happy, they're happy. So maybe it is Ashrei. We'll generate happiness. Our husbands will be happy. Yeah.
Very
So
good.
that's-
Awesome. Thank you. Wow.